and welcome back to How to Start Growing Monetise Your Podcast with me, James Burtt, and him, Alexander Malcolm Reginald Chisnall III.
It's actually Stanley George.
What is?
Alexander Stanley George Chisnall III.
That is solid. What a British name, great British name, Stanley George. Love it. Right. Should like it, my kid's called George. Anyway, today on the podcast, we're going to be talking about YouTube versus audio and where should you focus your attention. We can make this the shortest episode of all time. You should just focus on both.
Correct.
Bye. No, but on a serious one, because we have had somebody who's, I think, positively critiqued our podcast.
No, it was
previously.
really positive. They were a fan of the show.
They were a fan of the show. Hopefully they still are a fan of the show. And he basically said, look, you're making it sound like you can only do video podcasts these days, that you can only make videos, your podcast will only work if it has video. That's not strictly true, and hopefully that's not the message that we have been putting out, but it is a lot more difficult to market a show if there isn't video attached to it. It's just that simple. You know, even the most hardcore podcast purists who love the audio format, like a Tim Ferriss, is now having to do video. It's now doing clips.
And it's just
the way it is.
It's just the way it's gone.
Just the way it is.
Since social media became such a ridiculous part of our lives that the vast majority of promotion is done through social media marketing. Yes, you can also do PR. Yes, you can also have a newsletter. Yes, you can do ads, but ultimately, social media is a beast, and if you can harness it to promote your podcast, why wouldn't you do it? But it is 100% visual, isn't it? Is it 100% visual?
Something like that.
Something like that.
Close to it.
Yeah.
Well, last month as well, at the time of recording, it was the first time when YouTube was the biggest platform for listening hours of podcasts.
Yeah.
So it has... and you see all these rogue stats coming out, like YouTube is the preferred, like everyone's favorite platform, but it's not the biggest platform because you're still getting more from listening than just watching. But apparently YouTube was the platform that had the most watch or listen time of podcasts.
Amazing.
So in a world where... I think the only reason why you wouldn't, and I think there's two reasons why you wouldn't do a video podcast. One is if you were doing like coaching, mentoring, therapy, something like that. Something that's very, very...
I need that after this
personal. I know, I'm not surprised. But something that's really... sensitive subjects, that might work. Things where, and we've talked about this before in a previous episode, Holly Tucker, who owns Not on the High Street, she's got a great podcast, but she knows that the reach of that podcast has been massively squashed because she only does audio. Now, she said she would never move away from audio. She would never do video because the people that she wants to talk to would not be comfortable on a camera, and it changes the dynamic when you're presenting on a camera, which I think it absolutely does. And she wants to have the intimacy of that conversation that could only be had in audio.
I get it.
And I did. And I hated video when it came into podcasting.
Same.
I absolutely hated it.
I took 6 years to switch to video.
Yeah, I took a long time. Yeah, I literally, because clients were forcing us to do it, that we actually ended up doing it. As a consumer of podcasts, I listened to most of mine on the road, in the car. You know, I've got a 3-hour drive back tonight after this wonderful day that we've spent together. I'm definitely moving to Paul, by the way. But and I will listen to that. I don't watch it at home on YouTube. I don't watch podcasts.
I'm not that kind of person.
I don't find the watching experience. I don't get enough of a value from watching it as opposed to listening to it. I don't get something different from it, if that makes sense. But again, I know that I'm probably the minority rather than the majority in that instance. Yeah. So if you can, you've got to be on both platforms. If you can't, so that's one reason why you wouldn't want to do it, if it's something like super sensitive. And the other reason is if you... I think a lot of people think it's a budget thing. I think a lot of people think that it's easier, and it is easier to just do the audio thing, but you are massively restricting the reach of that podcast because we said it before, the battle for long form attention is being fought in short form platforms. You know, the way that you find new organic listeners is via clips, is via shorts, is via reels, is via TikToks, is via getting the guests to share that out with their network. Now, that might not be your be-all and end-all. It might not be the reason why you're doing this thing, in which case, fine, carry on as you are. But even, you know, back in the day, quote graphics were a big thing when we first started, weren't they? And then do you remember the waveform reels, the videos you put the audio platform in?
We have a client still doing that, or telling us to do that.
No, do you?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So these were static graphics with like a moving waveforms. You'd upload the audio behind it, wouldn't you?
They've just done this as well as their marketing.
Have they? Wow. Okay. Well, that doesn't really work, guys. I hate to break it to you, but it doesn't really work. But anyway, so the other reason, I think the second purpose for sort of being aware of utilizing videos is discoverability. YouTube is the second biggest search engine on the internet. Also owned by Google, so it's got the same technology as Google has got, which is the biggest search engine on the planet. But also, in terms of that discoverability, it's not just YouTube, it's now Spotify that are trying to genuinely find organically for you, by the way, not for paid promotion, that'll probably come next. But they are giving you the opportunity now, if you use Spotify for creators, you can add a short form clip to your long form episode, which will drive traffic to it. And I know that it works because a mate of mine literally sent me a screenshot of my face on his Spotify the other day going, wow, this is interesting. And he'd been listening to Alex Hormozy, Diary of a CEO, High Performance, and he sent me the screenshot of a podcast I'm involved in, and the Spotify decided to serve that clip up. Now, again, based on that listening audience and that consuming audience, I think that moving forwards, the Spotify algorithm is probably better at connecting with people than we are on a one-to-one basis, which is another reason to give them all the tools to let them do their work. And I think also when you've got new platforms or new parts of platforms, they always skew the algorithm to favour that new stuff. So there'll be loads of people who are using Spotify for creators or used to use Anchor as it was back in the day, who are either not actively uploading there now or not utilising all the tools like the clip functionality. So if you do, I think you've got a real shot at being discovered. And discoverability is one of the reasons why you get pod fade of 90% of podcasts after episode 7, because once you've got the initial hype of a launch phase out of the way, it's bloody hard work.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it, isn't it?
It is the reality, guys. You know, listening, watching this podcast, it is bloody hard.
Yeah.
Once you've got that spike, if you follow the launch strategy that we've given you in a previous episode, it becomes really difficult. You know, you look at, again, Stephen Bartlett, Diary of a CEO, has given, wrote an article and he showed the graph. His podcast literally flatlined for the 2 years after launch, didn't hardly ever grow. You know, mine was the same. And look, I still think you can make, don't get us wrong, you can make a great audio podcast that's a fantastic, listening, immersive experience for somebody, but can you grow that? It's tough. It's
with the exception of true
tough.
crime, that's one of the only ones that I've seen where the category in general is really, really popular. I think it's one of the most popular categories that we have.
Right.
And those majority of those are
number one category.
Audio.
True
is
crime.
it true crime still? Yeah.
Still.
So it's so that.
Don't know why, because I've never listened to any true crime. But there you go.
Oh, I've listened to a few. If you go down that rabbit hole, it's amazing.
I'm sure.
Have you never listened to Serial?
No.
You call yourself a podcaster? Unbelievable. But again, that format, that medium, that storytelling narrative lends itself to that. But again, the sector became popular, so it's easier to get discovered in that sector, even if you're not utilising video.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think one of the other things that people look at when they sort of go video or audio, and I don't think it's an either or thing now. I think it's a both. Is the key thing is like how listeners and viewers differ. Now, I remember with a podcast that I'm involved in called Business Broadcast with James Sinclair, we were about to roll out YouTube and video on that podcast about a year ago now it was actually. So we've done a couple of hundred episodes together, something like that. He already had been doing the podcast in audio format for about 3 or 4 years, consistently, week after week after week after week. Always got a good number, 30-ish thousand downloads per month, something like that.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns we had as a squad was like, well, are we going to cannibalise that marketplace? Because if they can now watch it, they won't listen to it necessarily. What's really interesting is the whole pie grew. Like the audio listening's grown and the video listening's grown, and it's found a completely different audience. Some people are watchers, some people are listeners, and that's showing that in the space of a year. It's grown to 100,000 downloads a month for watches, and that's not including that's not short form, that's the long form content, because Jimbo doesn't do the whole like shorts on YouTube thing, doesn't really count the views on short form. What does he always say? Long form funds your bank account and short form funds your ego. So, which is probably
true.
There is a case to that, but equally I think there's an opportunity to use short form to drive to long form.
Totally.
But listeners and viewers are different. They act in different ways, and again, much like people, some are auditory, some are kinesthetic, some are visual, some are auditory. Like there's people who utilise different senses in different ways. And whilst you've got the platforms that are there to do it, if it was super difficult to put a video online, then I'd understand it. But it's just not anymore.
Well, we used to, I don't know if you did this, when we used to launch a new podcast, we used to do the audio launch separate to the video launch.
Yeah, we did.
Now it's like,
yeah,
why did we do that?
Yeah.
Because the thought being was that it would cannibalize it.
Yeah.
So we separated them. Let's put it out on audio first, and then we'll put the video out 7 days later or 4 days later or something. And now you look back and you go, why the hell did we do that?
And it's always changing, by the way, because YouTube generally has a much higher engagement rate in the evenings. So for some shows, we will put out the audio at 6 a.m. and we don't put the video out until 7 p.m.
This very show.
Because this very show, indeed. But again, even I'm talking to a lot of YouTube experts that are like, just put it all out at the same time now.
Yeah, okay.
Especially because the video is now also out on the Spotify variant as well.
Yeah, of course.
And for the time being, whilst you're getting a percentage of premium subscribers potentially through Spotify, you're not then going to be able to monetize your YouTube channel as quickly. So if you're diverting that attention, that might not be beneficial. Let's quickly, before we wrap up, let's have a look at the revenue comparison. So breaking down the money side of audio versus video. Again, they're very, very different subsectors, and you can't really go, oh, the price that you're going to get is X, Y, Z, because it's completely dependent. On YouTube, there's CPM, so the cost per mille, that you will get paid once you get into the subscription, once you're able to actually monetize. Mille, it's Latin for 1,000.
Yeah, it is.
Don't pretend you knew, Chisnall. You just thought I was talking Italian. But basically, the CPM that you get paid is...
Robert De Niro, talking Italian.
Every show you've done over the last 8 episodes, random 80s music reference point. But I like it. It's a good little Easter egg we're playing with this within this podcast. But yeah, so for example, one of the podcasts that I'm involved in, because it's a business podcast, it's got a business audience, I think the CPM is like $32. Like it's huge. It's high.
$32.
But we had a podcast guest on who was building like meme accounts. He had millions and millions of followers, millions of subscribers. His CPM was $2 per 1,000. So it just goes to show, it's between $2 and $36, and you'll fall somewhere in between those two numbers, basically. Audio side of things is more difficult to put a price point on. Now, again, there's different ways to monetize your content. You could obviously have a sponsor, and you just do a sponsored read. You could potentially insert programmatic ads, and then the programmatic ads, again, will pay you based on the audience size that you've got. And that sort of cost price that you'll get for your CPM and an audio perspective can range between, I don't know, £10 and £15 per 1,000 people. So you can't say that audio is more valuable than video or video is more valuable than audio. It depends on the content that you're making. Again, if you're looking to monetize your content, the strategy, like everything else with audio or video, is it's not either or, it's both these days. But I get that it's getting challenged, it's slightly more challenging. There's some great phone apps I saw the other day where you can literally put your phone on landscape mode, record a podcast, 2 little clip-on lapel mics, and it'll cut it together. Some really good tools out there. There's Riverside for recording remotely. There's some great stuff. Don't let I guess in summary, don't let the additional challenges of video put you off doing it, because I think the challenges are definitely not outweighed by the benefits.
No, do you know what? The first podcast that we ever did video, I'm going back years now, it's literally 2 iPhones on 2 tripods, one focusing on one on the host and one on the guest. Don't let technology be a barrier to what you want to do. Like, even as we said, if you're literally just looking to capture the content to promote the show, you don't have to put the full thing out. I don't know why you wouldn't. I just don't know why you wouldn't. If we've got podcasts that are, which again, I don't really understand why you would do this. Maybe people have just got it on in the background, but we've got a couple of shows where they are not video, but they've recorded it, and they've just put them out on their YouTube channel with one static image, and it's outperforming the audio.
Really?
Yeah.
Bizarre, isn't it?
Bizarre. It's a completely different audience on YouTube.
Absolutely, and different sort of consumption, levels of hunger for consuming that content. So don't let the tech put you off. And test and measure with all this stuff. Everything we say on this podcast, test and measure it. Try it. If you haven't been doing video, try it. If you have been doing video, try different formats, see what works, because you can only improve what you test and measure ultimately. If you have enjoyed this episode of the podcast, please feel free to let us know. Please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. If you've got any feedback, any comments, any questions you'd like to ask that we can feature feature and answer a follow-up episode, then please let us know in the comments, either on Spotify or on YouTube. But until next time, from him, Alex Chisnall, the podpreneur, and from me, James Burtt, the professional buffoon, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.